What's going on, Opecast? It's Braden, and today I have a very special guest, someone I would consider a friend now. She shares a very creative eye and wants to keep moving things forward through creativity. Instead of doing the same old, she helps sets the standard in the culinary scene and as well as the creative scene around the country. This is Chef Liz of Tenacious Eats. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Braden. I forget that this is a podcast because I feel like we're just hanging and talking. So you got to tell me if I need to edit myself.
I just want people to be themselves. So if you want to, if we had a beer in here, I'd be like, you kick back, open up a beer. But I've gotten to know you. You're someone I admire. And I think even just like, we don't get to talk often, but we just see each other's like drive, passion. Okay, cool. Everyone's doing that. I don't want to do that. That's boring. We want to do something different. Let's take some steps back. Let's talk about your upbringing and how you got into the hospitality industry. And then we could also talk a little bit about the role of the title of a chef and how it's more glorified now.
I mean, it's great that it's glorified, right? I mean, when I started cooking, I was just a cook. I hadn't gone to culinary school. I worked at this local restaurant, Italian restaurant here in St. Louis that no longer exists, called Mama's. And it was family owned and operated. It was awesome. I loved it. Then I went to Chicago to go to college. I went to Columbia and got my degree in film direction. So I know it's kind of like,
okay.
Yeah, I took a left turn there.
It's tying all together. It's making sense for me.
Well, I cooked. I worked at this place in Chicago. Fellow Chicago folks will remember this place. It was called the South Loop Club. It was a little seedy. It was a sports bar. We served like Greek fusion food. It was like Greek American. 3 a.m., sports games, the Bulls games. Oh my gosh, we didn't break down the kitchen till 4 a.m.
Like, was it in the 90s during like prime Michael Jordan, second greatest basketball player of all time? Sorry, that's
second greatest.
LeBron.
Oh my gosh.
I've watched LeBron every year for Christmas since I was 13.
I am getting thumbs down. That was prime Bulls era. I lived in Chicago in, I think my first year living there was 93. So yeah, it was awesome.
Different energy.
Way different energy. Talk about being glorified. I mean, you couldn't touch the Bulls. They were just, fire.
Everyone's talking about it all over town every day. Like, how many did MJ score? Like,
well, I mean, and it was always about Michael Jordan sightings in Chicago. And, I remember being told you got to go eat at this place because Jordan eats there. Mm-hmm. This is where he goes all the time. So when we had a Bulls game, I mean, we were just slammed. But I used cooking to pay for school, to pay to live, to, ride the L, to pay for everything I had. But I never thought of cooking, well, especially at that point, as a way to make a living. There was no Food Network. There wasn't any, you know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, this person is a chef. I remember going to the bank or going to class and smelling like the kitchen. There wasn't any, oh, cool, you work in a kitchen. It was like, oh man, can you move over a couple of seats? You smell like garlic. But it's exciting to see that change. And I think it's really based on the evolution of the Food Network.
One of the reasons I did ask about, you being in Chicago during that Jordan time was because it was such a gathering. Like, everyone had to go see the game, and it was a lot more pressure, I would assume, because like people want that good meal before they go. And it was just like a lot more hype, a lot more buzz, kind of like what we see in Kansas City right now with how great the Chiefs are,
Oh, yeah.
So you're having more people that are coming into town all the time. Now, did you have anybody in your family that was a chef or anybody you looked up to early on?
No one in my family was a chef per se, but my dad's family owned a bakery in South St. Louis called Hebner's Bakery. And it was my great-grandfather, my grandpa, and his brother and his wife. It was, multiple generations running a bakery. And what I really took away from that is not only learning how to cook. My dad's mom cooked a lot. She taught me how to make everything from rouladen, a lot of German dishes, German, St. Louis German family. But I learned how to make GI pancakes from my grandpa. He was in World War II in the Big Red One. So everything with my dad's family was about food. So everything was, someone was mourning. It was about food. What kind of coffee cake are you going to bring? It was celebration. What kind of coffee cake are you going to bring? Or stolen? Everything was about showing emotion and affection through food. So I really absorbed that. And then, really, I'm a Gen Xer. And I really think I got experimental and creative because my mom worked. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was a professional aviator pilot. So he was flying all the time. My mom was teaching. So I would get home and start dinner. I did dinner sometimes in a very non-normal way. And I think...
What's that?
I would decide I was going to crumble up, Vienna sausages into, a meatloaf, or I was going to put... red hot riplets or something crazy inside chili.
Wait,
things
you do that too?
Yeah.
I was just about to be like, I'd put that in my chili, but see.
Or a red hot riplet on a fried bologna sandwich.
Okay.
If you smash them in there with the fried bologna, oh my God. So I started to do weird things. At least my family thought I was doing weird things with food, but I really kind of considered that the experimental time, kind of coloring outside the lines. And I try to really hold on to that part of myself, because as you get older, and then I eventually went to culinary school. After going to culinary school and being classically trained, French taught, and you're being influenced by other chefs and other mentors in our culinary field, you really feel like you need to streamline what you're doing, to stay inside the lines, think about shading, think about palettes of color, all of these things. But I've kind of come full circle with that because I've done I call it tweezer food. I've done, using a sous vide, I've done all of that kind of fun stuff. And there's a place for it. But in my mind, I'm kind of coming back to my culinary beliefs that it should be about the story that you're telling as a chef instead of what is dictated by what's trending. At least that's my belief. So,
I agree.
To be authentic, to be honest. I don't think you should draw from other people's, that's why I try not to look at like food mags and see what other chefs are doing, because it's amazing what they're doing. And tweezer, I jokingly call it tweezer food, but what they're doing takes a lot of time and concentration and effort. It's just that for me and my style, I feel like I really want to get to more of the marrow of what I'm trying to share. And I feel like sometimes with, all of the fluff and manipulating food into these different shapes and different things, that you're missing the soul of the food. And so with my culinary experience, going to school in Chicago and cooking there, I really feel like I'm drawing from, I did see what they were doing at all these amazing restaurants. Yep. But at the same time, I was cooking in a place where we were making old school Greek food, mishmashed with Americana. And I felt like those kind of food stories are very honest, and I relate to that.
I feel like sports is often like a really good metaphor for life. I think about basketball. Growing up, I may have seen this player do this and that. I am not going pro, but I can get inspiration based upon my skill level to try this with my left hand. And it's like, you can see what, at that time, what some of the high-end restaurants were doing. And you're like, that's great. Guess what? I am not jumping from the free throw line, but it's like, I can do something really, really great within my realm. And my realm is just as valuable.
I always draw from different cooking experiences, different opportunities I've had, people that I've cooked with, because that does become a part of your tapestry, your story, and their food influences. There's always a crossover, but I have an issue with people borrowing other stories and saying that it's their own story when I just don't. I feel like, it's like someone trying to duplicate music from another culture or another country. it can sound good. It can sound somewhat close to that. But I feel like the timbre is missing.
Yes.
You can just tell there's something off, and sometimes you can't even put your finger on what that is. But I feel like it's the same thing with food. It has to come from a real place, real experience, and a real story so that, like, every plate I serve out, I can't go to every single customer, especially if we're doing an event for over 100 people. I can't say, this is exactly what I was thinking when I made this, and this is how I was feeling. I'm trying to communicate that through the plate, and I think it's the same thing with, like, sports, music, art. It has to come from something real.
Yeah.
And everybody has a different interpretation of what that is or how to communicate it. And I think that's authentic too. So if someone feels they have the need to make these beautiful, intricate plates, which I do still for different clients, or I do for different events, that it comes from, a real draw from the story.
There's a reason behind why you're not just because, hey, yeah, I saw this and not to knock it, but like, hey, yeah, I saw this on TikTok and I thought this would be a really cool addition. There's like, what, I was very intentional. I realized, you were a dentist for 30 years and you went over to like, I don't know, if you're doing a private dinner, you like I'm sure you talk to the person, you figure out some of their family favorites. Oh, that's your favorite Italian spot in Italy. What made it your favorite? Well, there was something about the white sauce. And you're like, is that how that works with you? You're like, what can I do to make something similar?
I want to hear what was happening to them, where they were, I went to Italy and I had this for the first time. I ask the questions, I have a pretty good idea, like what region they were in, what ingredients are readily available. I have a firm grasp of that, but what I want to know is, who were you with? Were you in love? How long was this a romantic trip? Was this getting to know someone? What music were you listening to then? I need that information when I create a dish for someone, for a customer or a client. I need the backstory. Just the location, to me, that's all kind of surface level. I like to dig a little bit deeper.
I like how you explain that. You ever have something so good, you're like, I cannot have that every day. I can eat this certain dish every day or every month, and it's not my favorite dish, but that one dish I had that one time was so good. I can do it once every other year because I don't want to ruin that magic. But like you said, there's nothing like that very first time. The first time you ever went to New York, you're always going to remember that. You'll probably remember every time, whatever. But like that first time, you're always going to remember. But like, I get what you're saying, because there are places here. They're like, yeah, when's the last time you went? I was like, 2 years ago. And it is like, there's this place in Orlando. It's at the top of the Four Seasons, Capa. I think it's like Brazilian steakhouse. My wife and I talk about that all the time. I'm like, it is the best overall meal I've ever had in my life. They had like this, we had a steak flight. And to be honest, like, I love highlighting all St. Louis places. I've had steaks and stuff here. But that, once you have like really good certified A5, like Wagyu, not saying we have bad steak. I'm not saying that, but good Lord, when you put that and it's just like melting, and
you can taste the sunshine in the pasture, right? You could taste the happiness in that, in that animal, because so much attention is given to making them
I think like
happy.
A massage too, with that, like, and then at that place too, like you in the night with like, there's fireworks all around every single night. It's Disney, right? But kind of going back, so you came back to St. Louis. At what point did you decide to use your major and then your side hustle, your work, and put them together to come up with Tenacious Eats?
I was actually cooking full time when that came about. I had just taken over as executive chef at the Scottish Arms. I think this was, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong on the dates, because
life.
This is a gift. It gets a little mushy, doesn't it? You're like, what year was that? I think it was 2012. And the owner, Allie, bless his heart, he allowed me to experiment. They had been doing for years some special like Scotch, whiskey, Beer dinners like one Monday a month. And it was really something special. You know, it was plated, reservation only. And it was just really cool, you know. And I had been watching a film called Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't, but I feel like when we end this podcast, we're going to give people like 4 movies they must watch after listening.
Eat, Drink, Man, Woman is a really sweet story. And they've even done like other ethnic versions of it. It's such a great story. It's a father. He's a widower and he has 3 daughters and he's fallen in love with someone else, but his daughters are still like taking up his whole life, but he's a chef. Every scene in that film is pure food porn. And my sous chef and I were watching this at the time when I was the chef at the Scottish Arms. And because I was like, you got to see this movie. And I made him watch it. And we had to pause the film because we were starving. We had to have, you know, we wanted what we saw in the film. We went out and we got quick Chinese food, came back. What we were eating wasn't what we saw on the screen. So it was very disappointing. You know what I mean? It was in contrast.
I love that too, because usually I'm like, I don't want to knock this and then I'm going to knock it. But it's like, hey, we're having, you know, whatever fast food joints. Like, yeah, we have the SpongeBob burger or something. And you're like, you know, or they like, you go to the movies and they're like, the such and such pizza. And you're like, but no, that's not it. That has nothing to do with that movie. You saw it in the movie and then you wanted to make it yourself or like try to make something inspired off that scene.
Oh, I wanted to do all the food.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly beautiful, complicated Chinese cuisine. And I talked to Allie and I said, hey, you know, the Monday night things that we're doing, I want to show a movie and I want to write a menu based on the food in the film and cook alongside of the movie screen and pause to introduce courses. And he's like, okay, love. And he let me do it. And the first one we did at the Scottish Arms in the main dining room is another film called Short Order. It's about a female chef who feels like she's being abused by the culinary industry, used and abused like a prostitute. And she's been doing fine dining and she just kind of disappears from fine dining and opens up a short order stand. But there's so much beautiful food in the film. In one scene, she flambés some beautiful tiger prawns and then like puts out the flame with lime. My sous chef and I set our pans on fire next to the screen while that scene was going on.
Like literally?
Literally, like we had 2-foot flames in our pans. And the expression of the diners who were there was just their mouths were hanging open. They were watching their food being made, watching food, the same food on the screen, and the flame. I mean, everybody likes flame.
An immersive experience.
Very much so. I noticed something that night too. I watched men who are in very nice suits, I might add, pick up their plates and lick their plates in the dark. And as a chef, I had never seen that. And I had a good friend who was there that night. I'm sure she wouldn't mind saying, but Kat Neville was there that night as one of our guests. And she said, I don't know how to explain this, but I think you need to explore this. So I did another movie night there. I did Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, but we did it outside. It was a very complicated menu. It was really hard to execute. It was insane, but it was so gratifying because I felt like I was immersed in the film too with my guests. So I decided I was going to start my own business and start doing this. I was showing art house food films like Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, Short Order, Tom Hopo, all these great culinary films that no one knows. And no one was really coming. There was like maybe a handful of people attending. And then I started to work with Julie, my amazing PR rep.
One of the best people in St. Louis.
Julie, she changed my life, my world. helped me really start the business because she told me, you really need to show films that are cult films that people love, recognize. And I argued with her. I'm like, I don't want to do those. I want to do these really cool European films, Chinese food films, and she's like, you could do that later, but you
got to
really
reel people in with what they know.
Yeah.
Then, yep. Kind of like we were talking about off camera.
And she was right. And we started to fill seats. We started to show movies. And then I realized by showing the cult films that I was a huge fan of these films too. Julie's always right. She made such a great point.
Yeah.
But at this point, I mean, this is our 13th year.
How big, because there was like the big turning point. I always say BC 2020 before COVID, right?
Yeah.
But how big did you get in like right before COVID?
Right before COVID, actually in 2020, it was a Valentine's Day show right here at the Mahler Ballroom down the street. We had 350 people in attendance to see The Princess Bride.
Wow. So then COVID happened. You couldn't do that.
COVID happened and I took a position during COVID. We couldn't show films publicly.
Yeah.
We tried to do it virtually. It was just too labor intensive for myself and Steve and our crew because we made all the courses for a film, license a film. It was The Wedding Singer. Can
you talk about the importance of licensing? Because, I think people, we've seen it where, now that there's a social media realm you're part of now and people are seeing it. So then they are like, hey, we're going to do this inspired by this movie and that movie. And it's like, you're going through the legal licensing route because like, those artists, like, you're an artist yourself, a culinary artist. You're like, hey, yeah, I have this movie Clue. We sold it out. I'm paying for the rights to use it. They allow you to use it so many times, so many words. They may give you some merch, but those are artists. Those, they deserve to be compensated. So can we talk about the importance of the licensing?
If you're not licensing the images from a film, think about the actors who belong to a union, right? So they have to pay union dues to even be on a set. They go through all the work of learning the lines, portraying characters, doing all the press junkets, marketing the film. That's a lot of work. We're not even talking about the writers, the producers, the people who build the set. So if you're not paying for the licensing and you're doing something inspired by, or I've seen so many events pop up recently, I think it's theft. I think it's sampling music without paying the original artist.
Yeah.
It's not, when things are open to the public, you know what I mean? Like, what did Mickey Mouse just become public
first
domain?
Version.
The first version, of Mickey.
Steamboat
Willie.
Yeah.
Steamboat Willie. When it becomes public domain, great. Then it's public domain. Yep. But in the meantime, there are people who really rely on residual payments if that film is still out there and available. And I've seen so many events, people showing movies in restaurants in their full length without paying for.
And promoting it as we have this movie going on.
Yeah. And I've seen film-themed pop-ups. It's kind of funny because when I started Tenacious Eats, pop-up wasn't a term yet on the scene. It was takeovers or pirate takeovers or so we're kind of the OG in St. Louis of, I guess we're still a pop-up. I like the pirate kind of thing better. We're taking over.
I like that, take over.
Yeah. But it's theft. You're stealing someone else's creativity. You're stealing someone else's hard work, effort. And I think the other issue, too, is I think a lot of these places that are showing films without licensing or television episodes without licensing, if they're caught, I don't think they realize how expensive the penalties are for doing so. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, chef, there are these other places that are popping up that are doing what you're doing. I'm like, nah, I'm not bothered by it because I know that I'm doing my due diligence to pay and compensate the studios, the actors, the writers, for letting me utilize that as a way to, really, it's also marketing the film again. So the film that we just did is celebrating its 40th anniversary. And I would say we had a good chunk of our audience who had never seen the movie Clue this past weekend.
So that was its 40th anniversary. Then you had Gremlins who just did their 40th. I didn't watch Gremlins in 20 years. It's weird to say that now in life. But like we had it on VHS, but like I watched it there. But like you are bringing it back because you're putting it back on the media, Clue. Even if they aren't able to go and attend, they're thinking about the movie.
Yeah, and you have to be careful because whoever did the logo work for a film, right? Mm-hmm. That's another form of creativity and artistry. So that's why we make sure like we have, we've done television shows, Tenacious Eats themed television nights. We did a 1950s night years ago, and we licensed the Three Stooges. We licensed Lucille Ball. I Love Lucy. We licensed Bugs Bunny because, we paid for 3 different episodes, but, I don't like the idea of theft. It's like somebody doing what I do. I'm like, wait a minute, this was my idea. I get, I know it's a sincere form of flattery, but I'm like.
You know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about that. Dante and I have talked about that. It's
like you want to lean over what you're doing and shield the person next to you from copying what you're doing on your desk, right? It's like, I made the sky green. Why are you doing that too? Come up with your own theme,
we can work together.
Yeah. I've done that a few times, actually, in the past. Brought in someone who was trying to do what we're doing and said, let's collaborate, and I think once they find out how hard it is to do what we're doing, they go, okay, I'm not interested in that anymore. Yeah. Like, what do you mean you have 100 plates coming out every 10 to 15 minutes? It is stressful because it's not like normal restaurant service. You have to keep it warm. It's really hard to do really great plating in the dark, and it's going so fast. But we try. And I think what we're doing is such a different entity. I love it. You're talking about going back to Aristotle's law of diminishing returns. Your favorite dish that you love and you might go back and revisit after a year or two, the cook that's been making that over and over again, it's really hard to interject joy into something that you've made thousands of times.
Yep.
It becomes almost mechanical. In my mind, doing a brand new menu every show keeps my cooks, myself, really involved because this is the first time, maybe the only time we're going to do that dish.
I'm excited. Yeah. Just very excited for that next, what am I going to do? And so I attended Wet Hot American Summer. That was your first one back after a few years. You've had Gremlins, you had Clue. Are you allowed to share what's next?
What's next? We're going to do kind of this cool concept dining with Work and Leisure. We're going to be doing an event called Reception. It'll be February 14th and 15th at Work and Leisure.
Shout out to Work and Leisure. Raven, Cocktails, Jordan Hospitality, just a great group.
Well, Raven was a part of Tenacious Eats.
At Scottish?
No, we were at Mad Art Gallery for a while. And actually, even before that, Raven and I worked together when I was the executive chef of the West End Grill and Pub in the Central West End. And so Raven and I have worked together, in all kinds of different situations. Like we did Pulp Fiction at Mad Art Gallery, and she even dressed up for us. Like with the wig. And
I've noticed she like even for, was it Wet Hot American Summer? She's the one that she got in the canoe. And she's somebody that like, when I started trying her cocktails when we first partnered for Avalanche, and I told them, because I love what they do. They're good people. And I was like, look, I have this idea. They ran with it. And even this year, I'm like, I want you guys to they deserve the credit. Jordan deserves the credit for what he's been able to build, how they embrace St. Louis. Raven makes some of the best cocktails in the city. No, in my opinion, others should not get all the praise when they didn't even come up with it. She deserves it. So I'm like, every time I'm talking about, and the way she decorated this year, I'm like, look.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing.
I have like crazy ideas, but it's not possible without them. And, even other people in other places, like, they're people I'm going to praise because.
Well, this whole reception thing was her idea. And I think it's been, I don't know, I guess 7 years.
Takes time, yeah.
Since I remember her bringing it up and saying, hey, I want to do this. And she's been, on and off. I remember her talking about this concept, like the whole idea of going to someone's wedding reception and it being a hot mess and not being scripted, because we've all been to dinner theater. I'm not a huge fan of dinner theater, by the way. Again, the authenticity. I love this concept with using improv actors as the bridal party. I'm going to be doing the food. I'm going to do 3 courses. I'm doing a apple fennel salad, a composed salad in the beginning with a honey lavender vinaigrette. And then the main course is going to be a sea salt crusted beef fillet with haricot vert mignon, which are like French green beans wrapped in bacon and then flashed in the oven. So their green beans are nice and crisp, but the bacon's rendered. A Bordeaux wine demi-glace, and a tiger prawn, a butter and herb blanched. Tiger prawn is just like a really big shrimp. Mm-hmm. So
I know I play with those. That's the one I'm thinking of, right? The one you could like.
Yeah. Yeah. Little.
You're going to just get the plate out and then you're just going to look around and you're going to be like, look at all these people, grown adults, having a good time playing with it.
We're going to do a wedding cake.
Both nights?
Both nights.
Okay.
The wedding cake is going to be dark chocolate with dark chocolate ganache and a champagne and raspberry filling. Mm-hmm. But there may or may not be a catastrophe with the cake at the reception.
What's up with work and leisure and catastrophes? I mean, dang, they had the avalanche every night, and now there's something else for this reception.
I think we're really embracing the chaos
of the world.
Think about all the wedding receptions or weddings you've ever been to. You know how the bridesmaids are going to act. You know exactly, just watching the best man, like what might or might not go down. And you've sat through things kind of cringing, not able to laugh hysterically, right? Because you're there for your friends or family. What we want to do is recreate all of the obnoxious situations we've all been through, but be able to laugh and express that humor, and it's okay, instead of having to hold it in and tell the story later.
I'm excited for it.
I am too, because I think this is, we've all been to this wedding before. Mm-hmm. It's just now we're giving people permission to laugh hysterically.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And the great part about it, it's Valentine's weekend.
It is.
The 14th and 15th, Valentine's on a Friday. I think I should be there on Saturday. I think I may be attending, I think the improv team may have it down, because I do like just attending things from time to time, unless you guys need me.
Oh, they'll see your face though.
Okay. I was going to say, like,
how are you going to stay away from the action? They might bring you in.
It's like, I'm looking forward to that one. And then are you allowed to share another one that's happening?
We are. We have licensed the Office episodes. Can you believe it's the 20th anniversary of The Office?
Lots of St. Louis ties to that.
Oh my goodness. A ton of St. Louis ties. So we're definitely showing that March 22nd. Tickets are on sale now.
Get them now because they're going to sell out.
And I think I can do this just for anybody who's a fan of your podcast. I have a discount code, and you'll get this. The passcode is BEATS, as in Dwight Schrute from The Office, his beet farm. So for a discount, if you go to brownpapertickets.com and type in BEATS, capital BEETS, then you'll get a really nice discount to come to it. We're going to do it differently than a normal Tenacious Eats event. We're going to do 5 solid rounds of Office trivia, and we're going to give away all kinds of prizes. We always reward for people who dress up in costume.
Yep.
We not only encourage it, we reward it. We're going to have our own version of the Dundies. We're going to make people dig in Jell-O for prizes, just like Dwight's stapler.
Yeah, the stapler. Yep.
Yeah. We're going to have the Office Olympics. We'll be awarding.
You're going to make chili?
Oh, yes. Okay. Kevin's chili. I'm going to try not to spill it. But Kevin's Chili, we're going to have Pretzel Day loaded. And then we're going to be doing, you ever go to a corporate event and you get the box lunch and you open it up? We're going to do a box dinner. And I'm using a very well-known restaurant that they frequent for the Dundies as my influence for the box dinner.
Okay.
Yeah, I think...
And those tickets are available now?
They are available now. They are going fast. So if you'd like to attend, just get on there right away and grab tickets. We had someone today about I think it was 14 tickets at once. So I think that's a good corporate event.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee that there will be more dates there. I mean, there is a chance, but for right now, buy it out. Corporate events, buy it out. Maybe you'll even do a daytime version of,
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking for ideas. I have a lot of ideas about what I want to do this year. I'm looking for ideas about what films people want to see. I know this year, Back to the Future is celebrating an anniversary.
I met the guy that wrote that in the musical, and to be honest with you, I just thought he wrote the musical, and then I Googled his name after. I was like, I just had a whole conversation with the guy that wrote the whole trilogy.
And he's a St. Louis guy.
He loves his Ted Drews. He was coming when he was in town, they were saying he was coming out there twice a day. So after the third or fourth day, they're like, hey, let's just do a Marty McFly for 2 weeks during the show's run. Nice guy. I just had no idea. And he was talking about the theaters he used to go to in town and how that inspired, and who knows, maybe he'll come back for it.
It's a St. Louis story, Back to the Future.
U City, right?
Yeah. And he even said I saw the performance at the Fox, Back to the Future.
All those special effects.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing.
Yeah, that was the most wow moment I've ever had at the Fox.
Yeah.
With how they did that.
We're
not going to spoil it.
No, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, not to use this as a reference, but I was like, oh wow, this is Disney level special effects.
My wife and I said that same thing.
Did you say it? I was like, whoa, I was blown away. But then hearing him speak at the end, and he was talking about, he came out with a cast, and he said, it was as simple as being in high school and looking at pictures of his dad, because his dad went to the same school he did years prior. And he was like, would my dad and I have been friends if we had gone to school together? If I could go back in time and meet my dad, would we have gotten along? And I think that's kind of something we all think about, right? Like, what if I could go back in time and meet my parents when they were in high school?
The younger version.
Yeah. Would we have gotten along? Would we be able to be friends? Do we have that kind of, you know what I mean? You're
making me think real hard on this podcast right now. That's wow. I'll call my parents after this one.
Like, Mom, would we have been friends? What were you into? But I've been looking at Back to the Future. The Breakfast Club is celebrating an anniversary. We did the Breakfast Club years ago, and we did it as a brunch. So I always look at films that are celebrating anniversaries because
it helps raise awareness, like you were talking about with Clue. And to be honest with Gremlins, I may have seen it one time on a social media from the studio, but until I knew you were hosting the event, I was seeing it all over town.
I absolutely love Gremlins, but watching it now that I'm older compared to when I was younger, oh my gosh, some things...
You see a whole different perspective on it.
Whoa. I mean, some things I'm like, wow, are things really that violent in the 80s? I'm like, yeah, they were. And there were parts that I don't think as a kid I thought were scary, but now as an adult, like when that one gremlin's in the bar and he's pointing a gun at Phoebe Cates and he fires and when I was young,
in America.
Yeah.
Different time.
Just, and I'm in the World War II vet who's talking about the Germans being terrible people and they put gremlins in cars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, I mean, you can look back at films like, War Games, the Russians were villains and, different points in time about who are we fearful of as Americans, and I thought, rewatching these films, it's such a joy too. For me, it's almost kind of like a new experience because some of these films I haven't seen since I was a kid.
It's bringing back the excitement. There's also a chance, and I think it's not in our control, but as long as it works out with a certain place, there could be something really cool. But either way, I know you and I will come up with all I can say is something. And when we put our minds together, and if that thing, and if not, maybe the plan B, and if not, we're going to come up with, that's all we can say. Foodie Friday, Chef Liz, 3 or 4 of your favorite spots in town.
And these are all people I know and I love. And I'm just going to put it out there, I never experienced any kind of Aristotle's law of diminishing returns because I look up to these people.
Yes.
That I really do. I idolize them. Chef Marianne from Nudo. She is brilliant, badass chef. Nudo, I can go there a million times and oh my God, she blows my mind.
Someone you highly, we've spoken about her, but you just highly respect during COVID, how they, made sure like their team was going to be taken care of day in and day out. Just great family in St. Louis.
She's a real chef. She's classically trained. She can do both pastry. She's a badass pastry chef in her own right, but then she can throw down on savory. She's just, I'm in awe of her. And she's an amazing person. Her and her husband, Eric, are just such great people. So I'd say Nudo. Second is Iemanjá, Brazil.
Incredible person.
Oh,
Very incredible, like family.
Yeah. Husband and wife, and Lamaya and Raul. Oh my God. You want to talk about authentic food that resonates somewhere in your soul when you eat it. And you might read their menu and go, well, this is pretty simplistic. It's not. It's so complex and deep and complicated. And I love Iemanjá, Brazil. I can't say enough about that restaurant and what they do. Raul is a genius. And then Lauren Balkan Treat Box. I
was just at Telva before this. Do you want leftovers? I have leftovers in the fridge.
Oh, no. I think we're going to go today.
Yeah.
Steve was asking, amazing people, though, create amazing food. And all three, and I don't think it's a coincidence that these are culinary couples. They're invested in their crew. Their crew is their family, and they're so dedicated to St. Louis. And they're not, huge egos. They are diligent, hardworking, badass chefs and staff and restaurateurs. So those are my top 3. And then my number 4 is, I call it my Winchester. So if there's ever a zombie apocalypse and you're like, I wonder where Chef Liz went, I will be at my Winchester at O'Connell's on Kings Highway. I'll be in that back booth, the one that you can put your finger in the hole for some reason. Steve always jokes and calls it a glory hole. But there's a hole in the wood paneling, and I don't know why. I think there was a light fixture there years before, but it's been there since I think I was in high school. But it's dark and comfortable there, and the burgers are always solid. The drinks are always amazing, and it's got the light fixtures. I don't know if you knew this. The light fixtures in O'Connell's were the light fixtures from the 1904 World's Fair. Those huge chandeliers from the British exhibit at the 1904 World's Fair. So that's a piece of St. Louis history hanging right there in the dining room. So that's my Winchester for drinking and burgers.
For great places. Now, if you can go to the movies with one, usually I ask for dinner guests. If you can go watch your favorite movie of all time with someone, who would it be? And what are you watching?
I think, I don't know, there's so many people. I would want to I want to drag you to the movies and make you watch all these movies like Clockwork Orange,
and hear where my mind goes after, oh my God, we can do blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. And see your face. Some of these movies, oh my God, such good films that are out there. It sounds weird to say this, but I am such a huge Jim Henson fan. If I could maybe sit and watch a classic movie with Henson, or
I may be wrong. That's not the Muppets?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of controversy going on with Muppets 3D in Disney World is what I'm hearing. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. Aren't they tearing down the theater?
I think so. They're building like a Monsters Inc. We got to build worlds.
Ew. I love the Muppets. Yeah. Does it have to be somebody alive now?
Nope.
No. I think Jim Henson. I grew up, I'm a Gen Xer. I grew up on Sesame Street and the Muppet Show. And Jim Henson, I think, is one of those amazing creative minds that was so far outside of the box and doing things in such bizarre ways that no one had done it before. I love that kind of mind. So I would love to go to a flick with Henson or, just pick his brain.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Once again, an intellectual property that lives on forever.
Well, he literally raised our generation. I mean,
He did Sesame Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
So over 50 years.
Yeah.
Like my niece is watching that.
Sesame Street was a way to educate latchkey kids. We were in front of the television without a lot of adult supervision. So I really feel like Sesame Street, Jim Henson is responsible for Gen X.
Yeah.
In a way, because it was characters that we were familiar with. They weren't perfect. Some of the psychedelic stuff. You ever watched Sesame Street from the 70s? Oh, it's amazing. There's a disclaimer.
It's on
by the way.
HBO, actually. I could watch that.
Yeah.
HBO Max.
I bought my kids the old episodes, the first 5 years of Sesame Street, and there was a disclaimer at the beginning saying not approved for all audiences. And I'm like, why? Why is that? And it was because they had scenes with a little girl going home with her male teacher after school to meet his wife and have cookies and stuff. And they were like, that's inappropriate now.
Okay.
Yeah. A mother nursing her child during a montage of milk. Where does milk come from? Milk comes from cows. And there was a scene where a mother's nursing her baby. And I guess that's inappropriate by today's standards. So
The world.
I loved the Muppet Theater at Disney World. I'm really sad. Is it true they are taking it down?
My wife, that's why we went for a day. We flew in on a Sunday morning. We took a 5 a.m. flight. The flight was $115. We flew back in Monday night. But also I needed to just be immersed in the holidays, and they just do it so well. So, yeah. So it's about to go. Last question, words of wisdom. Maybe it's somebody that aspires to do what you're doing. And if you do, get a license, or, just get into, creativity in the culinary scene, or they could be going through a tough time. What are some words of wisdom you would like to leave people with?
I think my words of wisdom is to embrace the chaos, embrace the hurt, embrace the struggle. It's a lot of I hear a lot of opinions about fighting this and I think it's, my advice to anybody who's new into the culinary world or creative, like what you're doing, what I'm doing, is to just learn to ride the wave. And you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And not let it defeat you. I know that sounds kind of cheesy to say that, but ebb and flow is such an important state of mind, I think.
I agree.
With eventually defeating.
I was gonna say, I always try to stay in the middle. When something great happens, I think it's amazing. I'm excited, it's cool, but I don't get too high, I don't get too low. You have your good days, you have your bad days. It's all about I feel like I'm just quoting things. It's about the journey, but
those things resonate, but learning how to not let the wave capsize you, because we all have stress and we all have challenges. If it's something new, something different that you feel passionately about, you're going to hear no. You're going to hit walls. You're going to have crazy, horrible things happen, and it's going to make you feel like you've lost. But someone older like me who's been doing this a long time, I will say, those are things that are going to make you appreciate hanging in there even more. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be just a little notch on the belt. Like, I made it through this. So you'll value what you achieve more by just, I don't know, is it cheesy to say, just stay afloat? Just
trust the process.
I don't know about trust. I mean, just learn how to, I think when people hear no, they're so devastated, and no is so finite. But understanding that just because someone says no doesn't mean that that's the end for you, right?
Just with that person or that company.
Yeah.
Well, Chef Liz, I know you're going to be back on here. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I'm always rooting for you. And we'll catch up and we'll talk in